From a bullish perspective, we want to see us close above these two kind of confluence of resistance points to continue its move higher. What we don't want to see is a rejection from these 2 points of resistance back down here. And what we ultimately don't want to see is us to close below this essentially area of support. So,
welcome back to another episode of Wagmi TV. Today, Armada and I are here, and we're going to run through our weekly rundown of the Aerodrome finance platform. As always, this isn't financial advice. Please do your own research. But we want to talk through why this token continues to pump, what the chart looks like, and kind of some of the reasons behind the pump. And so with that, let's get into it, Mata.
Yeah, let's dive into the chart itself. So you all are very familiar with this. You've seen this chart a fair amount. So as we can see, we've been doing quite well as of late. We had this massive pump that we had talked about, and then we actually pumped over our previous resistance. What we did talk about in our last video is what we called confirmation. So what we did see is we pumped up, and we actually ended up at one point closing above our previous resistance. Confirmation typically means that we are closing above the candle in the wick that had actually closed above our resistance level. So what we saw here, if we zoom in slightly, is that we did close above our resistance here with this candle on the 14th of October. But instantly what we saw is we actually shot right back down, and then we started playing in this area and then it dumped out pretty heavily below that previous resistance level. So this stays as a pretty solid resistance for us. What we do see now is this new trend line from our all-time highs that comes through that Monday, the 14th of October spike that we saw as well. So that's going to be a new level of resistance for us. So interestingly enough, it's coming into, again, this resistance level, and there's kind of two factors here that we're going to have to battle up against. So as a bull, what we want to see is this, of course, to break above not just this resistance level, but of course this trend line as well, and close above that with confidence and confirm there to see that it's going to go higher. At some point, we would expect it to potentially go up here, maybe retest these levels, and then it's ready to actually ascend to the previous all-time highs, which is exciting. What we do know is that we have a pretty solid support level here. So we tested it here even after this big dump. Last week, we actually tested it again, which it did hold, and it did fairly well after that. What we are sort of starting to monitor a little bit is what we would call a head and shoulders. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, I can actually draw it out really quickly here. So what you see is a left shoulder, the head that goes to that 14th of October high that we saw, and of course the right shoulder right here. So this is getting 2-3 steps ahead. So as a bull, what you don't want to see is this to come up here or even turn around right here and then come down and eventually break this neckline is what they call this. If this were to break, we would expect it to at least do a measured move of essentially this all-time high or this recent high to the neckline, which would basically take us right to this yellow line that we've been tracking for quite a while. That'd be some pretty good support for us. So from a bullish perspective, we want to see us close above these two kind of confluence of resistance points to continue its move higher. What we don't want to see is a rejection from these 2 points of resistance back down here. And what we ultimately don't want to see is us to close below this essentially area of support. So we've been doing really well as of late. It's been really interesting to see. And something that we were talking about a couple weeks ago was the RSI. So again, what this is just essentially monitoring how overbought or oversold an asset is. So sometimes you can see some delineations here. So this is actually a lower mark than this low that we saw most recently. So it actually went higher in price, but what we saw is the RSI actually went lower. So if we were playing a trading play on this, what we could actually see is that we're coming into support. We're actually forming what we call bullish divergence. So we could have actually moved into a trade here and come out of that trade here towards these resistance levels. So from a short-term perspective, again, what we're really looking for is for us to close above these two levels of resistance And what we really don't want to see as bulls is, of course, us to reject this and ultimately not to close below this line. But something that we will continue to monitor. Right
Yeah.
now, we're into some resistance, so something to keep in mind. But again, we're still bullish until proven otherwise. So that's essentially what we have on the chart here.
And with those two support levels that you're talking about, what are those prices at the moment?
Yeah, so this range is about, let's see, $1 to $1, basically $1.03 is kind of that big support range that we have here. And then the larger one is about 73 cents. So that would be quite a big drop from here. I mean, that would be from here moving down about 40, 41, 42%. So we definitely don't want to see that. But ultimately, right, what we would hope is that we're holding this level. And ultimately, what we would want to see is almost like a triple bottom. That way we can really see some awesome upside from that. So good question.
Yeah, and I think the big news, at least in the U.S. at the moment, is the upcoming election. With the rhetoric that Trump has had, he's far more pro crypto than what we've heard out of Kamala. And so I think that's kind of what you see with Bitcoin and some of the other prices around is, if Trump was elected into the office just because he is pro crypto, you could potentially see some of these assets fly, and the opposite if it was Kamala. So I think that's great. It's really great because you drew that line where it looks like in 5-6 days here we could potentially see us coming up to a decision very close to that line, and so I think that's an awesome trend line.
Yeah, oddly enough, right, when the top end of our resistance zone and this trend line meet is basically Tuesday the 5th of November, Wednesday the 6th of November. So funny enough, the charts are kind of telling us what's going on. So we just really have to monitor those dates and make sure that we are moving in the direction that we're hoping. I think ultimately, right, when we think about the election, especially in the United States, right, neither candidate is going to stop spending, right? I think everybody's going to continue to spend and spend like drunken sailors, right? So one thing that we talk about Bitcoin a lot is, hey, it's kind of our hedge against the US dollar going down and kind of the inflation that we're seeing. And so if we continue to see Bitcoin go up, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of these assets like Aerodrome, like some of the other alts go up as well. But of course, something to keep in mind, especially with like the short term perspective that we're looking at, definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that November 5th date is going to be a big date for asset prices. But, as overall metrics for the Aerodrome platform, we wanted to hop into this Dune dashboard here and kind of show some of the, other bullish metrics that we see. So, as you examine the volume within the Aerodrome platform, you're seeing it just continue to rise. This is something where you're seeing it between the basic pools versus slipstream. In the last, I would say probably 10 epochs, we've seen a significant jump in volume. And an epoch is 1 week on the Aerodrome platform. So this is, the last 10 weeks. But, just another reason why Aerodrome is flying is because of the usage, because of the utility and the liquidity hub that it's offering on that base layer 2 is, you're seeing it skyrocket in volume. You're seeing both basic and slipstream pools doing very well right now. And because of that, you're seeing a lot of swap fees throughout the platform. And I think you're seeing almost maybe $80 million in swap fees. As of this last epoch. And so, super exciting for Aerodrome. Like always, we're covering this stuff because it is a super promising platform within Base. And, we're super bullish on Base. We're super bullish on Aerodrome. We think it's probably that next layer 2. It's already the leading layer 2, but it's really that next network that people are going to onboard onto from Coinbase. So super exciting stuff here. Mata, you got anything else you want to add to this analysis?
No, nothing specific. I think we've got a lot of big tech earnings this week, number one. And then 2, we have a big Fed decision. I believe it's next Friday.
Yeah.
And then we also have the election in the US next week. So I think there's been a lot of assets, not just out of the crypto market as well, when we're talking about stocks and equities, et cetera, that have kind of been fluctuating just slightly. There's been a lot of low volume. People are kind of just waiting to see what happens from this. But from a long-term perspective, I think you nailed it on the head, right? If this is something you believe in, and if you believe in crypto as a whole, from the long-term side, I think we can see these things make some pretty awesome moves. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, a lot of news coming out in the next week, and it's really gonna yeah, make a lot of different assets change very quickly depending on who gets elected and what news comes out of the Fed, whether we're dropping rates or if we're keeping them the same. So yeah, a lot of things to keep up to date on. As always, if you want to keep up to date on the Aerodrome platform, this is the channel for you. We're covering it every week, every couple weeks. So we appreciate hearing your guys' thoughts in the comments. Let us know if where you think AERO is going to be going, or if you have any questions about AERO that we can help answer. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Wagmi.